Alright, so today I'm going to show you an illusion called Motion-Induced Blindness, also known as MIB. This can be found on michaelbach.de. It's a website that has hundreds of different illusions and how and the different effects they have on us and like what they do. But today we're going to be talking about MIB. So what is it? MIB is a visual phenomenon where a small distinct object disappears from awareness for a few seconds when it's surrounded by a moving pattern. Why does this happen though? Essentially, your brain temporarily ignores the stationary object due to the distraction of the moving background, causing it to fluctuate in and out of conscious awareness. Why do we experience this? So, competition in visual processing. The brain constantly prioritizes visual information based on factors like motion, contrast, and salience. In MIB, the moving background often takes priority over the static object, leading the brain to temporarily ignore the stationary element. The competition is thought to occur in areas of the brain like the visual cortex and parietal regions, which are responsible for integrating and interpreting visual stimuli. It's also good to note that our brain ignore these stationary elements because they find them irrelevant and not as a threat to us, which is why we often don't see them. Now, does this hold a purpose? Now, MIB doesn't hold a direct purpose, but it could reflect broader principles of how the brain prioritizes and processes visual information. But there are many perspectives on why this exists in the first place. Our brain has limited processing power and needs to allocate attention effectively and simplify visual input to make sense of complex environments. Prevent sensory overload sorry, overload by filtering out static or redundant information. Prioritize motion, which is often associated with threats or opportunities. An alternative view is that MIB may not have specific evolutionary advantage, but could be incidental byproduct of how the brain resolves competition between static and dynamic stimuli. Alright, now I'm going to show you what this actually looks like. So if you get close, or actually you don't even really have to get close, but stare at the red and green blinking dot. While you're staring at this, even when I'm staring at this right now, you will start to realize that the yellow dots are starting to fade in and out or disappear completely, and it leaves just the array of blue crosses. This is a clear visual of what MIB looks like. It's very interesting how our brains just completely forget that the yellow dots are there. It's very eye-opening of how different the brain can work, stuff like that. Alright, so the typical effect, as you saw in the video, a stationary, highly visible target will intermediately disappear from conscious awareness when surrounded by a moving pattern, essentially blinking out for brief periods, as you saw, even though it remained physically present in the visual field. This occurs because the brain interprets a stationary object amidst a moving background as an irrelevant noise or potential error within the eye itself, effectively removing it from conscious perception. Some realistic scenarios of MIB are pretty common to encounter. They include driving with road hazards, aviation, navigating crowds, cycling, and sports, and a lot more. So we have driving up here. So when you drive, and usually at fast speeds, the area around you is moving very fast. Now, as you saw in the illusion, the rotating array of movement of the blue crosses can simulate the scenery while you're driving as moving fast. Now, people might not see, specific road signs or even pedestrians not sitting still. This can often lead to why a lot of car crashes happen. like especially on freeways. And then we have aviation. So a fighter jet, as seen in this image, they move at incredibly fast speeds, and they might not see other stationary target, like such as birds. They're not very seen because birds tend to be very still while flying in the sky. Not that they'd be that high, but you know what I mean. And then we have sports. Sports is a big one too because sports is very fast paced, a lot of movement, a lot of running. You have the crowd behind you as well that moves a lot and makes a lot of this movement in our brains. So could be a reason why especially in soccer, the rule of like offsides might be violated a lot because they might not even realize that they're going over due to especially the high pressure too. This also kind of clouds the brain and makes it so they're more focused on kicking rather than like thinking about what's happening and what's around them. And then crowds are another big one. Crowds, like especially like if you're walking through a crowd, a lot of moving people, you might not realize like somebody standing still or even just like maybe something on the floor. Alright, impacts and changes made in these scenarios. So a driver might fail to notice a stopped vehicle on the roadside because their attention is drawn to oncoming traffic or moving reflections on a wet road. Now this could be a big reason why a lot of car accidents happen, especially because a lot of people aren't paying attention in the first place, especially in Vegas. And yeah, so they just kind of like opt out of it and not really pay attention. And for aviation, a stationary plane in a holding pattern might be unnoticed if a pilot's attention is focused on the movement of a nearby aircraft in the clouds. So, they might not see each other. And then biking, so a rider focusing on the flow of traffic might not notice a stationary rock in their path, which could lead to an accident. And like I said in sports, a soccer player focusing on the ball and other players might overlook the stationary goalpost or sideline markings, which could lead to errors. Alright, and then that's the end, but I also have one more, another illusion, or another example of MIB, and this one's more realistic. So this is more like a table with a bunch of random items on it, and it is harder for this to activate. However, if you get close enough and if you just focus on the middle, you'll start to see them almost like start turning invisible. Like they won't blink out as fast as the yellow dots, which I find very interesting. Maybe it's harder for larger objects or more colorful objects to be, disappear from our vision. But I found this very interesting, how it's a lot harder for these objects to go away. Maybe it could be the overall contrast of the image, because it's not like it's not all very even. There's the color of the wood, but I found this one very interesting of how it works. Very, it's pretty cool. Anyway, that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Yeah.